That's our cue. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get going here in about 30 seconds and take some time to let some more people filter in. So hang with us for a minute. All right, so we're going to get started. We're here to talk about tech talent today, particularly reskilling and upskilling the workforce to close the gap that employers are now facing, filling the jobs they have, and with any luck, also close the gaps between workers with jobs that pay well and those who find themselves locked out. So I'm going to let my panelists here introduce themselves, and we'll get right into it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ayoka. I'm Vice President with Bitwise Industries.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kennon Harrison. I'm VP of Workforce Partnerships with Revature.
Hey, everyone. I'm Ladio Gunro. I'm the Global Director of Strategy and Operations at Multiverse.
Good afternoon. Matt Muench, Chief Impact Officer at P33, based here in Chicago.
All right. So Matt, I'm going to start with you. I want to talk a little bit about P33's recent report on talent reskilling and tech. Your research says that there's 161,000 unfilled tech jobs just here in Chicago. And that seems like an awful lot. So unpack that number for me and tell me a little bit about the report.
Yeah, so that I agree. That does seem like a huge number, and you start to think, wait, do I know any software engineers in Chicago? Like, it's got to be like the whole market, right? So it is a correct number, but a few things to know about that number. One is this is all tech jobs. So this is software engineers and data talent are the largest share of that. Overwhelmingly, that's remained true for several years. But it's, your network support folks, it's, data analysts, it's, your tech support, help desk folks as well. So it's the whole market of tech jobs. The second thing is this isn't just tech companies that we're capturing here, it's the entire economy. Airlines, banks, manufacturing firms, all of them are hiring software and data talent and have a huge appetite for it. So that's thing two. And third, and probably the most important factor here is that's an annual number. So that's the total number for the year of 2022. Which we think is a useful number to keep in mind because it allows us to compare with the pipeline, the supply we're putting out of our various education and workforce training systems to know, are we on track to meet that demand? So it's a big number, but it essentially captures the increased digitalization of the entire economy. If you wanted to know, but what about today? What are we looking at? If you look at just a snapshot of the last 30 days in the Chicagoland area, it's about 30,000, 20,000 tech jobs, again, across sectors, across roles. So still a huge number, right? And still a much larger number than, the number of people who came out of an education or training program in the last 30 days looking for a tech job.
Generally speaking, is that problem getting better or worse? We've obviously had a number of tech layoffs around the country, mostly the FANGs, the biggest players, but I've seen a lot with startups and even sort of companies in the middle. Is that problem getting better or worse?
It's a great question. I think it's important to note something on that question. Around what do we make of these layoffs? And I say that because we've been getting inbound requests, from our college partners that we work with, and even undergraduate students that we work with who are like, hey, I was thinking of going into tech, but it seems like everyone's getting laid off. So maybe I should be, go into law or something. And there's a bit of a corrective that's called for there where these companies hired so massively through 2021 and 2022 that the number they laid off is a tiny fraction of that growth. So tech employment is still elevated from where it had been a few years ago. And I think that's like important to bear that in mind. The other interesting aspect of this is so many of the companies that we work with as P33 here in Chicago, which are sort of, some are tech companies, but again, others are across sectors. They've all struggled for the last several years to hire these software engineers and data scientists because the big tech companies were buying them up and bidding up the price of that talent. And so in a way, I think there's a, like, sort of like drooling, moment where these companies are saying, hey, finally, we can fill out those teams that have been so understaffed. And so, it has the problem, kind of as you asked it about, like, geez, you have all these unfilled jobs. Is it getting better or worse? I think it's just sort of changing in nature. It remains the case that we just have so many more opportunities that companies could offer if we were producing enough talent ready to fill those roles. And that's kind of like, it's the economic and social tragedy of that we're all trying to work on.
So problem's not going away anytime soon. Tell me what P33 is proposing as a potential fix to this problem. Problem's not getting smaller or going away anytime soon. So what's the solution?
Right. So there's two like big answers, and then let's go deeper on one of the categories. One is, let's just make sure all of our education systems, our schools and our colleges are churning out talent ready to take these jobs and live fulfilling, economic and personal lives, right? I'm going to set that aside though.
Right.
There's a whole other question about what are the folks who are already in the workforce who want to break into tech, who hear about these great jobs that are paying on average, $120,000 or something, of the current job postings, saying, how can we help more of those folks get in? We ran the data and we're surprised and depressed to see how few individuals we were helping reskill, adults in Chicago, we were helping reskill from whatever they were doing today into a tech career. So that's, add up, apprentices, community college graduates focused on tech, the workforce development system, private boot camps, all of these together, but not less than 1,000 a year. And, we just talked about just 20,000, postings over the last 30 days. The number's not big enough. And so we think there are 4 big ways to solve this. Again, thinking about the reskilling opportunity for folks already kind of who've reached adulthood or even young adults. One, and the one we focus on, the one we want to talk about here, is the power of the market and finding these market operators who have uniquely the scale, the speed, and the quality to get to that sort of size to meet the demand that we have. So that's a big one that we want to talk about today. But there's a few others. The second is, let's make better use of our community college system. They have inherent scale. The city colleges in Chicago serve 50,000 students every year. How can we as P33 and other folks who are in this work help get more companies engaged in that system, shaping programs to be reactive or responsive to market need, and ensuring that those students get real, authentic opportunities to show their skills to companies? So community colleges are the second one. Third is is a different way to think about the entry level. Say, all right, generally companies ask for you to have skills A through Z to get that first, junior software developer job. Well, can we say, well, actually, how about if they have half of those and they start at kind of a junior level, but it gets them on the ladder and they get some mentorship and support to then get sort of mainstreamed into the career pathway at those companies. This is what Accenture has done very successfully and at large scale. And I think more companies could do that, sort of redefining their entry level. The fourth is thinking about aggregating this demand. Now, there's some companies in Chicago and across the country that have huge hiring needs and they can do a program themselves or create a partnership themselves. But there's a bunch of others that, we would love to take 3 sort of junior, engineers or a couple of data scientists that come from non-traditional backgrounds, and they can't create their own program. So can we, as an intermediary, aggregate that and create high quality, large scale, efficient programming to help more companies participate and ensure more people who want this sort of career path opportunity get access to it?
Right. Well, let's go around the horn here and sort of talk about how each one of you plug into it, because you've all got a slightly different take on fixing this problem. So, okay, let's start with you.
Sure. So at Bitwise Industries, we do focus on recruiting and getting folks into our apprentice program that, as Matt had mentioned before, that traditionally would not be recruited, or in some instances, they feel as though that being in the tech industry is not for them. So in terms of working with people who are formerly incarcerated, the LGBTQ community, communities of color, our second chapter folks, you know, those people who are looking to do something different with their careers, something that they feel passionate about, single moms, folks that feel as though that they are, again, not the folks that would traditionally be in tech fields. We look for those people. We look for those people to be in our apprentice program, you know, that have needs, you know, whatever type of human needs that they may have that serve as barriers for them to participate in an apprentice program, which, by the way, for us, works to lead to a permanent position with Bitwise, or we assist those folks in finding a position in, excuse me, a corporation or a company that Matt had mentioned. So that's what we're all about, looking at folks who are here in our cities, who are overlooked, underrepresented, also undervalued and underappreciated, and lift them up and include them as a part of this community. And I'm happy to be a part of that, by the way. And I do want to mention that for us, with our apprenticeship program, for those who are accepted to it, what we do is we do pay them throughout the entire time that they're in the apprentice program, and also provide any other types of support. The barriers that I was mentioning earlier, anything from like childcare or food insecurity. We have social service folks that work with these people to make sure that these things are addressed in partnership with each one of them.
You're also a tech company, correct? In addition to doing a lot of training on the talent side, you're also a tech company and an employer.
Yes, we are. So many of the folks who finish our apprentice program, we're able to hire them ourselves so that they can serve as tech consultants and service support for many of our clients, and also gives us an opportunity to expand on the work that we're doing in tech services. So yes, we employ them. Many of the people that are my colleagues across the country, not only do they work, you know, in different components of Bitwise, but they are tech consultants. And it's so cool to see people that look like me and represent different communities be in this work.
Right. Right. Kennon, tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, happy to. Ayoka, thanks for teeing me up. I think everyone will notice a lot of similarities. We'll notice a lot of similarities between these three great organizations that are here, and of course P33's, certainly from a mission perspective, but also from an impact perspective. I'll speak for myself, but I think I'll get some nodding heads. The work that we get to do is addicting. It is like impact meets social upward mobility meets economic upward mobility. I mean, it's an amazing thing that we're able to do every day. So I'm unbelievably grateful to be included today, and unbelievably grateful to even be in the position I'm in to talk about this stuff. Revature is similar to Bitwise. We're an employer. We're actually the largest employer of entry-level tech talent in the United States. We're hiring thousands of people a year. Our model is inherently structured around talent enablement and talent development. So when I say that, every model on the table here is inherently structured around, I think, I'll venture to say, around talent enablement and talent development. For us at Revature, what it means specifically is that we work with Fortune 500 companies for the most part, and create apprenticeship programs and create training enablement programs that are bespoke to the needs of those individual companies, and sometimes down to the department level inside of those companies. So we're creating curricula, we're creating training, we're creating soft skills development, we're creating very bespoke solutions, but we're doing it, and having 10-year first mover advantage is very helpful, at a pretty significant scale, right? So we've placed hundreds of people in Chicago. We actually have 5 offices, one of which is in Chicago. We're headquartered in Reston, Virginia, just outside of DC. But we place nationally as well. So what we're working on and what we're working towards is twofold. One, really trying to increase demand for the right demand for talent to increase diversity in tech. I think there are a lot of complicated and complex facets to this issue. One of which is that there are barriers to entry that are totally artificial, and they're not based on skills, and they're based on proxies. And everyone on this call is in a position to help assuage some of those issues. I think the other side of it is, it doesn't matter how good the pathway is if no one wants to walk down the pathway in the first place. So empowerment of talent, I think it's cliche at this point. We've been saying it a lot in our industry. There's not a talent gap. Far from it. There's an opportunity gap. There's an empowerment gap. There are millions of people who could be unbelievable tech professionals. They just don't think that they can. They don't think it's for them. Ayoka, you talked about this very specifically. I think it's a huge pie, and conversations like this are what allows us to do what we do in terms of empowering more people to believe this is even possible in the first place.
So who are some of your customers or your clients?
I'm not sure the ones I'm supposed to name and the ones I'm not supposed to name. We have about 55 to 60 Fortune 500 clients. 7 of the top 10 largest banks in the US are our clients. 8 of the top 10 global systems integrators are our clients. 3 of the big 5, the largest retailer, who I'm sure you all know, et cetera. We serve all industries, and very specific to Matt's point, we serve in terms of our kind of core competency in terms of our client base. We serve organizations that need help attracting the right tech talent. I think the Googles, the FANG companies of the world, they kind of don't need help, right? They're getting whoever they want. What we're here to do is help level the playing field in sort of the empowerment of talent and the battle for that talent for our clients.
Laddie, tell me a little bit about your organization.
Sure, and Kennon tees it up perfectly for us. Very similar goals here. So again, I'm Global Director of Strategy and Operations at Multiverse, and we're a growth stage apprenticeships company focused on providing corporate partners across the US and UK, where we originally founded, with the talent to meet their most critical business needs. So overall, we have 2 big mission goals. One is create a diverse workforce, our future tech leaders, by building on an outstanding alternative to university and traditional higher education, but also corporate training, right? We want to make sure that we have a good alternative to corporate training, knowing that that doesn't necessarily meet all the needs of both the apprentice or the trainee or the company. And then I think the second goal here is really around leveraging apprenticeships, which is new here in the US, but is very well structured in Europe and other countries and has been very successful to help companies solve their capacity, capability, and diversity challenges. We've trained over 10,000 apprentices, both current and past apprentices on our platform, and we focus on 18 plus who do not have college degrees. So we want to focus on that alternative pathway to higher education and upward career mobility and family sustaining jobs. Globally, we have over 1,000 clients. We have 600, almost 700 actually, apprentices across 30 clients in the US since we launched here in 2021. So we've made some great progress over the past couple of years, and there's more to come. But specifically in Illinois, we have 60 of those apprentices, so almost 10% of that number training with corporate partners in Illinois. Across the US, we can't divulge the whole client list like Kennon couldn't, but we have clients in Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, mostly namely American Express, Visa, Cisco, Verizon, and more. And our model works in 3 different ways. So primarily, we want to think about how we find, develop, and grow talent. So we find talent by sourcing entry-level talent from traditionally underserved and untapped sources. So we're thinking about community colleges, schools, nonprofits, community groups. And on top of that, one interesting point that Kennon and both Ayoka made is that we also look at competencies like interpersonal skills, problem-solving capabilities, conscientiousness, the sort of grit over grades piece that's really important, specifically if you're thinking about someone who wants to move into an apprenticeship and learn on the job. From there, we develop our apprentices. So we have a curriculum in teaching. We have full-time coaches who work not only with the apprentice, who is on the job 80 to 90% of the time, but also spends 10% of their time with us training on the job over 12 to 15 months. And our coaches actually work directly with our managers at the respective companies to make sure that everything is aligned as far as what they're learning and that they're delivering ROI to their corporations. I think those two areas, like our coaches and our content, are like the two key pieces to our secret sauce that makes this work. But I think the most important thing as we think about this is how we grow talent. So another big question we get is, if you're looking at this as an alternative to higher education, you also need to provide resources. So we have a community arm that has 10,000 apprentices globally already, where we have in the non-virtual world, you typically think about this kind of stuff as like sports teams, parties, meetups, alumni engagement, things like that. But as the alternative in a digital, sort of remote type of training, our big focus is on creating those spaces. We can make those lifelong connections on our technology platform. So this is bringing in mentor speakers. This is creating affinity groups. This is having resources and continuous training like throughout the apprenticeship and after, so you can stay connected, learn those soft skills, network your way into higher level jobs, and really create a career for yourself, starting with that apprentice. So we're all full-time paid apprentices as well, which is great. You are learning on the job as you're going, and our apprentices typically make around $60,000 a year on average as full-time employees who are contributing to the company bottom line and getting that ROI. So really exciting stuff, and it's just extremely important work, and we're excited to make a bigger splash in the US.
Let's stay with the apprenticeship topic just a little bit. Apprenticeships have been around almost as long as there have been work, but we don't really associate it, I don't think, with tech and white collar jobs. But you guys are all using it. It's sort of an old approach to a new problem. How's it working, and how does the apprenticeship model work in tech, which traditionally has always been about the degree, most often 4-year degrees?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I can jump in. I think
Go for it.
two of the big factors that we find apprenticeships nail and are really important in terms of tech and velocity of talent are the quality of the talent, the quality of the inputs, in terms of technical ability, and then how quickly talent moves from an entry level to a mid-level individual. And the reason that's important is because mid-level talent in software engineering specifically, but in tech generally, is the talent that's doing the bulk of the actual work, the actual nose to the grindstone writing code work. There are 28 million developers on the planet today, roughly. Only 5 million of them are what we would consider enterprise quality. Using apprenticeship as a model, not Revature's model, not Multiverse's model, just in general using apprenticeship, accelerates, certainly empowers people. It certainly gets new incremental individuals interested in tech careers. We have to do that. We need to get to 45 million developers in the next 10 years, and we're only at 28 million. We have to empower more people to believe that this is possible. But the apprenticeship, the nature of apprenticeship itself, it creates a velocity in the talent funnel, and it creates a higher level of base quality from a technical ability perspective that leads fundamentally, and I'm sure Lottie and I'm sure Ayoka would have stats to back this up as well, to a higher retention, lower churn, and more efficient work, right? So to give a quick example, we've done this 12,000 times. 70% of the people that we've hired, trained, and deployed through these apprenticeship models didn't have a computer science or IT background at all to speak of, and upwards of 95% of them didn't have any IT work experience. And we have a 90% 4-year retention rate with our clients. So when they leave us and go to work for our clients, they're still there 4 years later, 90% of the time, on top of a 97% placement rate. So we know for a fact, and can prove it mathematically with a very large sample size, that people who go through what we would consider maybe a protected learning opportunity in a professional environment will do better, will retain at a higher rate, won't burn out as quickly, and will have absolutely huge generational wealth building earning potential at the end of the day.
What's the biggest advantage to apprenticeship in tackling the tech problem? The talent problem has been around for a long time, and we don't seem to be getting a whole lot better at fixing it. What does apprenticeships, what does that do that starts to move the needle?
I can take that.
Go ahead, Lenny.
Well, sure. I think first of all, there's a disconnect between like the training and then the actual job. When that's the link that we seek to connect here at Multiverse. So, for example, if you go to a coding school or some sort of alternative training, you have to still, just like graduating from college, have that career connected resource to get you that first job. And you're competing against everybody else who's coming from the market looking for that one job at a Google or wherever. So for us, we partner directly with businesses to place people directly into the company. We sell to the actual line manager, the business line, so we know that the manager is actually setting the expectations for the learning to happen on the job. And that's our big focus on applied learning, because when we think about that, it's really important for us to be able to bring in that talent on day one and contribute, but also retention is key. So at Multiverse, we've been able to have 68% of our apprentices promoted during or at the end of their programs. And on top of that, just like Kennon was saying with their retention, 93% of our employer partners, so 93% of our apprentices are retained by our employer partners. That includes our established professionals as well. So for us, it's a really big focus of ours to think about how you can create that link between the training and the job. And I think that's one of the big key pieces that's helped us be successful so far globally.
Can I jump in with a question follow on? Oh, Ayoka, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, that we cannot underestimate the power of social capital that many of our folks don't have for all the programs and, you know, the companies that are here on this panel that we all know exist. So in terms of having access and having the relationships that oftentimes are necessary for you to even be in a program, an apprenticeship program, or any other type of recruitment strategy that some of these companies have, our folks don't know about them. They're not connected to those things. All of us on the panel, Bitwise included, we have those relationships. We have an opportunity to train our folks in a way that people feel emotionally safe and intellectually safe to take chances and to, you know, take a leap of faith and trust in their own intelligence and then trust in their ability to do this type of work, you know. So they know that because they have trusting relationship with us, that we will be able to connect them in a way that they probably would have never had if they weren't connected to us. So I really want to, you know, kind of like hone in on that in terms of having these strong relationships in the communities and then also in the corporate community as well, which I think that apprenticeship programs have this unique space where we are bridging those communities. You gotta have it in order to address the issues that we're talking about here. I can turn it back over to you, Matt.
How important is the earn to learn component of apprenticeships? You know, if you're trying to address a talent shortage, and you know, do you have talent that simply can't afford oftentimes to get the skill to fill the job? How important is that earn to learn function of apprenticeships?
You could go ahead, but I think we all have an
Yeah.
answer to that.
Well, we all have lots of thoughts on this.
Well, go for it.
Ayoka,
Jump
go
in.
ahead.
I mean, is that really what makes the apprenticeship helpful in a way that previous efforts to fix that problem really sort of didn't get very far?
Yeah, so I'll
Absolutely.
jump in. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Ayoka.
Jump in. No, you go. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Very gracious. It's an absolute game changer is not the right word, because as Lottie rightly points out, this has been going on for 5,000 years, right?
Except in tech.
Except in tech and in the United States, right? I think the really amazing thing about, because the earn and learn model is absolutely key. It's key. But it's foundational. Like it has to be there. If we want to solve this, it has to be there. Same thing with what Ayoka mentioned, that using apprenticeship model from a talent perspective, from an employee perspective, right? Using the apprenticeship model as a tool to overcome some of the artificial barriers that exist in any industry, certainly tech, but any industry, around getting your foot in the door, around knowing the right people around this, that, and the other. That's huge as well. But more than anything, in my view, the apprenticeship model is effectively indirectly engendering industry investment in workforce development. So it's bringing educational investment dollars that, to Lottie's point, would happen maybe in corporate learning, or would happen under the CLO, or would happen whatever, and bringing it forward in the process, whether that's into the degree program, or into post-degree, or into pre-degree, or into no degree. It's bringing it forward in the process. So effectively, what we're doing as an industry, from an apprenticeship, if you want to call apprenticeships in industry, or whatever you want to call us, what we're doing as an industry is helping our clients and industry, the tech hiring conglomerate more broadly, gain efficiency, right? We're bringing that back. And of course, it has positive externalities to colleges and universities. If it's structured the right way, it can be, as Lottie said, it can be an alternative to traditional higher ed. There are a million different ways you can structure it, but really what we're doing is bringing investment dollars. What is the point of higher education in this country? In large part, it's to get a good job that will not keep you saddled with debt for the rest of your life.
So let's dig into that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Are companies willing, do they see the value in that? Are they willing to pay? Are they willing to make that, that earn part of earn to learn? What's your experience? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'll just really quickly, I mean, the answer is unequivocally yes, right? We've done it for 12,000 people, and it's not a direct line. There are different ways to structure it, right? Companies are willing to do it. They're willing to do it in different ways that are risk allocated differently, right? So different companies have different tolerances for different kinds of risk, and we're, as an industry, providing a way for them to use those funds in a manner that de-risks that talent acquisition, de-risks the talent development, de-risks the talent enablement. And I want to answer a quick question at the end of this. Someone in the chat asked about recruitment and intake being important. Absolutely. What do you do for retention and promotion for mid-level folks? You do the same thing, but for internal employees. We have this unbelievable, we at Revature, but we as this industry have an unbelievable capacity for doing exactly what we do for entry-level folks, but for mid-level folks as well. And it's super important, as you rightly say, in whoever anonymous attendee asked this question, we have to support individuals in their entire journey, not just getting them started down the path.
Laddie, what are you seeing on the corporate side? Are your corporate partners willing to make that commitment? Do they see value in that? Are they willing to put up, the skin?
Yep, absolutely. And that's how our model works. Basically, like, you pay a full-time salary, and then the training fees, they pay directly to Multiverse. And it's interesting because that sort of like tuition model of us being able to provide that training while they're on the job is really important to happen. And that cost goes to the employer, as it should. Right? You're investing in your workforce, you're getting a clear ROI, but you're also developing your talent pipeline. And you don't have to go out and recruit, for example, like from colleges. And I believe it's also really interesting to think about how there are other incentives that exist in Europe for corporations to do this, but also in the US as well. So one of the big things that we're working on in the US is, in Illinois specifically, is tax incentives, right? So in Illinois, little known fact, you can get up to $5,000 in tax credits for every Illinois apprentice that you employ in an Illinois-based job, right? Now, that doesn't move the needle by itself, but it is something that helps underscore the importance of companies investing in their talent and then paying for that training via apprenticeships since they're already on the job. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that there are a bunch of other incentives that corporations do need just to sort of get a taste of how apprenticeships work. So for example, one of the things that we run into is, yes, we want to bring on apprenticeships, but how can we get some funding, grants, things like that to cover the fees so we can test this out? And I think it's a really important, really prudent way of looking at it. So what we do is we apply grant funding, we apply some of our partnership funding. We have a big partnership with the 110 Foundation, which is has a mission to train 1 million Black Americans over the next 10 years. And it creates a consortium of employers where there is some funding for them to take on initial apprentices. And the good news there is that most of those employers want to continue with that talent pipeline and keep those apprentices on full time. So employer investment is a really important way to get that talent pipeline into your company build those skills and for our apprentices to really show what they can do. And then they'll continue to invest full time as they, guide their employees who are former apprentices into full-time family sustaining jobs as they move up the career ladder.
Got it. So I got another question, from the audience, and Ayoka, I wonder if you can help us out with this, because you've got some experience in education. It says, how can you inspire high school and college students to understand, what sort of potential jobs are out there, and also, the skills, how to apply the skills that they're learning in tech to keep growing their skills? You give us a little, little perspective on that.
Sure, absolutely. So before I joined Bitwise, I actually was the director for the Gary Comer Youth Center on the south side of Chicago, and served in leadership there for 15 years, and workforce development, career development, as well as technology instruction, something that we did a lot of every day. And working with teenagers and with young adults is par for the course.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, in terms of what is key for them to see themselves in these roles and to want to go further in the tech industry, is for them to see other people who are doing it. The one thing that's really unique about Bitwise is that Bitwise, our locations are in communities, such as Grand Crossing and, on the west side of Chicago and different places across the country, where we are where our people live, right? And so, again, in terms of having physical access, and you're saying, like, what is that, right? As a young person that's in my community, what are they doing, right? They have an opportunity to kind of like touch it, feel it, experience it, be able to have folks that look like them and live in their community and around their community that are doing this kind of work. They start to develop these relationships. Also, in terms of volunteerism, from us, we do this a lot, where we'll volunteer with young folks. We also recruit young people, like now, to be thinking about being a part of Bitwise, and if not us, some other program or some other organization that suits your needs. We start thinking about that now for people who are in high school, people who are in elementary school, and also keeping as our key contributors and key partners, universities, community colleges, high schools, and in our particular case, CPS and other school systems that operate in Chicago and the Chicagoland area. You got to make those people your allies, right? And so that you're able to get into the schools in unique ways, even though we don't necessarily do programming and apprenticeships for young people. You got to be over 18 in this particular case. They have to know that we exist. They have to know that we are here, and we provide different experiences for them to know that this is something that is, a fourth option. So after you graduate from high school, you could go to college, you could go to work with us, you could have an apprenticeship with us, you could go to the military. All of that's fine, right? And even if you change your mind, this is an option for you. And this is where the apprenticeship industry, as I said here, comes in very uniquely, because we have to really be positioned as a fourth option for our young adults to know that it's for them, and that continuous education is actually happening for them, again, in a safe space.
So, another question that, for people who are changing industries, do you also train on the non-tech skills to get them ready for these kinds of jobs? How important is that? I guess we should maybe start by sort of talking about the difference between reskilling and upskilling. But once you get people into that pipeline, do you also have to train on the non-tech skills?
Yeah, it's critical. When you talk about quality of talent, you could talk about velocity of talent. It's not just whether or not you can code. It's not just whether or not you are a cyber analyst. It's not just whether or not you can, do database architecture, whatever. You have to work on a team with people in a company. You have to know how to interview well. You have to know how to advocate for yourself. You have to know how to communicate. And not everybody is exposed to the same experiences growing up. And you have to control for that if you're trying to help enable talent to get into jobs where it's not safe. It's not a safe environment, right? It's not, oh, you know, if you mess up, then we'll just correct you and it'll go on your way. You have to be good. You have to conduct yourself the right way in a professional manner and do show up on time, all those things. And so we build all of that into our apprenticeships. You know, we have 70 different apprenticeship tracks. We're building them all the time for our clients, and all of them have soft skills and what we like to call power skills development
Right.
inherent to the curriculum.
I would observe like the last thread of like 2 categories of conversation underscores a couple points really critical to me. And that's the things that we hear from businesses about how this is hard, and they come to us and they say, oh, we want to like hire folks from non-traditional backgrounds. We're just not quite sure how to do it or where to go, or we know we're not good at some things, like some of the coaching that Laddie talked about and that, you know, Ayoka and Kennon have mentioned as well. So you have these 2 aspects of these 3 business models that are critical to get right. How do you support both the technical learning and the broader sort of professional readiness and social capital building and coaching and all that? And also where you go find people from. I mean, it's a critical input to the business is to go find the right folks who've got the stuff and just haven't had the opportunity. And I think one of the struggles in our field of, you know, call it broadly workforce development, has been we haven't really figured out how to do those things well and at any large scale. And it's one of the exciting aspects of this conversation that the 3 of them seem to have figured it out. I mean, I'm excited about the trajectory, although, you know, I would love to hear more about how as businesses, you're able to solve those problems that have really eluded us as a field. And even if, you know, to get back to John's question a bit around the apprenticeship growth, I pulled the numbers in 2014, Barack Obama, the State of the Union address said, we want to double the number of registered apprentices in this country, which say something in the State of the Union. It generally doesn't happen. It's like, hopefully you move in that direction, right? But there were 44,000 in 2014. Now there's 96,000 total, you know, registered apprenticeships in the country. So we did more than double. But we haven't made much growth on the tech side. And that's what the sort of like the critical challenges that I think these folks have some insight into. So I'd love to hear more about how the business helps you scale. And it's one of the questions we saw in the chat just come through. Okay, these sound cool. How do we get them citywide? How does all of Chicago know about this? And how do we get tens of thousands of people in these programs?
Right. Laddie, you want to take a whack at that?
Sure. I think one of the key things is partnerships, right? So we're looking at B2G partnerships where you can kind of create a consortium of the people that you need. You need the training providers, you need people, the entity that will source the apprentices and bring in that's you know, fresh tech talent, but then you also need that sort of consortium of businesses that will be employing the tech talent as well. So for us, one thing that we're seeking to do is have more B2G partnerships. A lot of cities, a lot of states in the US now have these new initiatives to bring in more apprenticeships to their localities. And we want to be a training partner, right? Revature wants to be a training partner, right? Bitwise wants to be a training partner. So I think one, growing that awareness, which is tied to a lot of the goals that we're seeing our leaders in government have, is going to be really important. So I think that's one aspect that we can really, you know, continue to help us scale. And I think the other aspect is thinking about how we have those B2B partnerships. So how do you create that consortium? Maybe it's not with federal government, maybe it's not with state government, but of private businesses, similar to sort of the 110 organization, where you have a network of CEOs, a network of CTOs, a network of corporate leaders who are really gung-ho about apprenticeships, and then have a series of training providers and have a network of folks to really pull all of that together and then create scale in that way. So it's definitely something that's on our minds every day at Multiverse. B2B and B2G partnerships are key to helping this scale.
Totally.
Any success
that,
when you're pitching, particularly policymakers? What's sort of your go-to example that says you should do this and here's why? This makes sense.
Yeah. There are so many examples of how we could do that, but I think you have to go to the results, right? And you think about the company pains. So if diversity is one thing that we need to tackle, especially in the tech fields, this is one way to bring in diverse talent. Why? because 70% of Black Americans are screened out of jobs that require college degrees. So there's that one piece right there. How are you solving some of your challenges for diversity? And then there's also looking at tech talent and retention and needing to understand that you need a pipeline of people that can grow within your company, which is really important. So I'd say those are two things that we approach with our clients and potential clients with. It's really nailing down what those pains are and how companies like Revature, Bitwise, Multiverse can address those effectively and then create more ROI. And then you have that network effect. This CEO, this CTO, it has great things to say about apprenticeships, right? How can that parlay into additional growth for us and also for more apprentices to have those family sustaining jobs and an upward career mobility?
Let's not overlook economic self-interest. Matt, you had some
Absolutely.
stats in your study in terms of just the difference between tech and non-tech jobs. And if you're a policymaker, you care about your economy, and there's a real incentive there. Can you fill in a few of those blanks?
Well, certainly we think that it's not a controversial statement, I don't think, but having a competitive innovation sector, competitive technology economy, having a large share of your jobs in software, data, and adjacent fields is critical to a city thriving over the next 50 years. You can, believe it or not, in this sort of like superstar cities, theory of there's only going to be a few winners and the rest are going to struggle. But it's hard to argue with being strong in these fields and having the talent in your city and with these competencies is critical to a growing economy. And that is increasingly true over the last 100 years. And all the evidence points towards furthering that. So we think it's critical for economic growth in the city of Chicago, as well as expanding access to real wealth building opportunity. Our city of Chicago, some folks on the call not from the city of Chicago, about 60% Black or Latino. The tech workforce in Chicago, about 15% Black or Latino. And that's like, again, it's an economic and a social tragedy. But the flip side is that there's a huge opportunity at the intersection of those problems. If you say, geez, we don't have enough tech talent to fuel our company's growth or our company's digital transformation, and there's a ton of people in the city of Chicago who want better opportunities, well, can't you just solve one problem by solving the other and bring more of Chicago into the digital economy so that individuals and families and communities and the whole city are thriving? I mean, I know I can start to sound sort of like, overexcited and Pollyanna about it, but it's pretty straightforward as I'm just in the equation. Like, let's just get more folks the opportunity that they've been lacking. We have models to do it. You're looking at 3 of them right here, and there's others not on this call. Someone asked, again, I'll go back to, how do we scale this citywide? That seems to be the answer to a lot of Chicago's problems, frankly.
If I could just jump in for 1 second, sorry,
Sure.
if you don't mind. Lottie, Ayoka, absolutely right. The demand side, none of this matters if there aren't jobs. There has to be the right demand. It has to be there. It has to actually exist, right? It has to be the right demand, and we have to eliminate artificial barriers to entry for individuals, especially around diverse opportunities for people from underrepresented minorities, underrepresented backgrounds, more broadly, low to moderate income folks, et cetera. The other side of it, though, and I don't want this to get lost, is it doesn't matter how good the pathways are and how many jobs there are if people are too intimidated or too afraid or not empowered enough to walk down those pathways. So there is a side of this where I'll give you a proxy using degree programs, for example. The grand total of computer science degrees awarded to Black talent across every HBCU in America combined last year was 962 per the Department of Education. Only the FANG companies are competing for that talent, right? So it's yes, you have to have the pathway, but you also have to empower more people to believe that this is possible in the first place, because it's not just a diverse talent issue. There were 250,000 jobs last year in tech that went unfilled in this country. The pie is huge. We have to work together to solve it. There is no way that any one company, any one university, any one organization, any one government can solve it by themselves.
That comment, your comment Kennon, triggers a question that I have, and I think we as a city have, in terms of geography. And you mentioned sort of like what's intimidating about entering some of these spaces that, and I think Ayoka, you talked about social capital, maybe earlier, or someone did, and we're as a city trying to figure out, should we be emphasizing partnerships in communities where the Black and Latino populations live, and not say, oh, you got to come down to these high-rise buildings that maybe you didn't even visit when you were a kid in school growing up. And how do we think about the importance of geography and community in tech jobs? And I know Ayoka, you probably have a perspective on that, having worked at Gary Comer and some of the work happening down in Grand Crossing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if I could just say, what you're saying in terms of geography is so important in a place like Chicago. So like you have neighborhoods that are within minutes of being downtown, but a world away in our heads and in our hearts, right? And so in terms of the intimidation factor, I don't belong here, that is really, really real. And so I think that the stakeholders or the folks, the key contributors to building the tech workforce have to be very intentional and okay with what it means to step out of our comfort zone and to go into the community. In many instances, our corporations are already in the communities already, right? To some extent. So you may have banks or what have you that are already there. Well, how can you change those facilities, those buildings, those castles that we have, corporate, into places where people can feel that they belong, and also building trust? It's going to take a while, right? But again, that's where organizations and companies like ours, programs that we have for everybody on the panel, really come in and are key, because we are there. We can build those relationships. We already have the trust to some extent with folks, so that with all people involved, so that we can make those connections. I do want to say this thing though. The city of Chicago belongs to all of us. So not only is it important for the corporations and our industry partners to come into the communities and work here and and connect with us at the community level or at the neighborhood level, but we also have to work to set things up in a way that folks that live on the south side and west side of Chicago also understand and feel that downtown is for us too. And so yes, I can work in Woodlawn. Yes, I can work in Inglewood. Yes, I can work in Pilsen and Belmont Crain. Yes, I can work there, but I can also work downtown. I can also work on North Michigan Avenue. It is really going to take all of us to change that that perception that the whole city doesn't belong to us. And if we all work together to make that happen, I don't know, through an agency called P33 as our leader, to make these kinds of things work, it can happen. It happens every day. And so those folks that are on the call, just if you want to know what we're going to do next, just think about, what can you do today? How can you hire someone? How can you partner with us? Who else do you know that can make a difference, right? And then just with those folks that are on this panel and also that registered here, what a difference we can all make if we all just make one act in this direction. You know what I'm saying? And so we will all feel like we belong, because we all do.
Right.
Hope that kind of answers it. Yeah.
So do you feel like we're able to do good by doing well? I mean, it seems like sort of a golden opportunity given the demand, and who has the demand. These are not low paying jobs, and the customers of these companies, these are companies that are profitable. They are large companies. Do you think that this is the opportunity we've sort of been looking for to sort of cut into that equality challenge, and also solve a real economic problem in a way that maybe we haven't done before?
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, I think, especially for all these companies, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, to have a employee base that reflects their customer base. from a diversity perspective, knowing that you are serving people of color, you're serving people from all kinds of backgrounds. It's important to have the diversity aspect be reflected in your own employee base, which is one of the biggest things I think we're all focused on, is generating that type of value. And companies are really focused on this as well. And we can help make that happen and make it a reality.
Absolutely. I think thinking even more broadly than that, we have a real opportunity to prove that this is how to solve this problem. And in doing so, recreate the middle class in this country and reset the median middle class wage for an individual earner, 3 to 4 years work experience at $100,000. I really believe that there's an unbelievable amount of tech job growth coming in the next 10 years. And we have an opportunity to capture that in the United States and become the leader on the planet.
Are companies receptive to that idea that they can play a part and they should play a part, and they have an economic interest in having a more diverse workforce? I mean, they obviously need to fill the jobs, and there aren't enough people, but they also need to have a workforce that maybe looks more like their customer base. Are they receptive to that? Are they more receptive than they were?
The companies that will succeed are.
Absolutely. We've heard the exact same thing. And even it proves out in our numbers. Almost 80% of our US apprentices identify as people of color. Just under 50% are women. So this is actually being proven out with the companies sort of walking the walk in the ones that we partner with, instead of just talking the talk.
And is that a selling point for those customers, or is it a happy accident?
No, it's an absolute selling point. You can make
Selling
this sort of a
point.
nice to do and a selling point, but this is critical, I think, to having a business function that reflects the customers that they're serving.
Because part of it is like, do you get it? And
Yeah.
you always have to ask, are they getting it? And are we getting it more now than maybe we did a few years ago, maybe we did pre-pandemic?
I think, what we've seen, I agree with Kennon and Laddie's points on that. Also recognize the challenge of not only, is each company different? Within each company, you've got different individuals who all have to sort of get on board with different talent acquisition or development strategies. And not everyone approaches these questions from the same way. So having organizations like these who can deliver quality that meets everyone's benchmarks and then adds a bit of sort of positive energy and like willingness to push through barriers because they're solving other sort of internal diversity challenges that the companies are trying to solve. I think it's sort of a winning combo. But there's always the you're not going to get very far if you're not meeting the quality expectations that all the hiring managers, and talent acquisition has.
I guess
That's the
I'm
barrier to
seeing it more
entry,
from the
right?
top. With a company that comes to mind is United. Scott Kirby's been pretty vocal about that, whether it's hiring pilots or hiring technology workers. They have a lot of jobs to fill. That industry is going through one of its cyclical upswings. And they've just sort of laid it out there and say, we have to get more diverse. And I don't really recall hearing that as much several years ago. And I wonder if that sort of has the effect of getting other people on board when CEOs say, look, we need to talk about it, and we're doing it, and we're going to do it, and this is why we're doing it. Does that make your jobs easier?
Ayoka, do you want to jump in? I feel like I've been talking too much.
Yeah. No. So yes, it does make it easier. And there are a lot of folks who are champions in the corporate community for this type of work and what we're trying to do here in Chicago and also nationally. I think that in the other sector, you'll find this where you see that if you have some of your colleagues that are being successful in this space, then others can see that they're doing it too. I don't want to sugarcoat this. We have a lot of work to do. We do. Absolutely. But really celebrating, lifting up, and being intentional with our corporate partners who are, are trailblazing and doing this work and being serious about it. We'll continue to do that, because what else are we going to do? This is what we've decided that we're going to put our energy into, and we intend on seeing it happen so that the quality of life for folks that live in our communities that are undervalued, that it can improve. We want to be a part of that equation to make it happen for our folks.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. Said we go for an hour, and here we are. So thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a great conversation, and thank you to my fellow panelists.
Thanks for leading us through, John.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John.
Thanks everybody else.
Thanks, everybody.
See you
Cheers.
guys.
Have a great day.